Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. This is the Douk Audio Q11, and these are my Honest Audiophile Impressions. I want to thank Douk Audio for providing the Q11 for a review. To greatly appreciate it. Douk Audio, you rock. Alright, so the Douk Audio Q11. This will set you back $170 from your bank account, and it is a digital audio converter. It's a DAC only. But it offers something different than a lot of other DACs, and that is it has two DAC chips. The Q11 includes the Sabre ES9038 Q2M and the AKM AK4493 DAC chip. It is capable of 32-bit 384 and also DSD 256. It has SNR of 117 dB and THD of 0.0003%. And hey, you know what? It's small, it's cute, it's got this little window to show you the internals, and it's got two big displays, a really large volume knob, and several outputs and inputs. But what else does it include? So you get this big huge box. Nothing too special here, not even gonna bother to open it. You get a remote control, which we'll show here in a moment. And then you get a USB cable and a fiber optic cable. And both cables are well built. They're both nice and sturdy feeling, durable. They are a little bit on the thicker side, but also at the same time, they're not really stiff. And I found that they worked very well. Was very happy with the included cables. All right, so let's take a look at the Q11 real quick. Oh, also you get a power supply, but obviously it's plugged in, so won't be showing you that. All right, so on the front, you got your displays, your volume knob. On the top, you have this little window to show you the internals, and as you saw, it has LED lighting. On the back side, you have two outputs, RCA and 3.5, and then your inputs, coax, optical, and USB input, and then your power supply. Let's get it plugged back in here. On the remote control, you have a power button, you have a mute button, and then your selectors for your sources. There, it does have Bluetooth listed, but Bluetooth is not included. So you have optical, USB, and coax. Selector button to change between your different DACs. And then you have a button to control the lighting on the front, and then your volumes up and down. It starts up rather quickly. Boom, we're ready to go. I found that it had no issues with connecting to USB, coax, or fiber optic. It was a very easy click and play. You do have to download some drivers, possibly if you are a PC user. All right, so the volumes, as you can see here, it's not working very well with the remote face that way. There we go. All right, so lighting, and then to change your sources, it will show it in that screen. And then to change your DAC chip, you press the select button, and as you can see, it'll tell you over here if it's AK and ESS combined, or if it is AK or ESS. Really hard to use a control from backwards. All right, so overall, though, remote does work. Couple of things of note. The volume control works for both outputs, RCA 3.5. They all work simultaneously. So if you have it connected to, let's say, if you're using it as a preamp or volume control going into Fosse Audio V3 monos, and you have it, set at about 66, but then you want to use it going into a headphone amplifier, you're not going to be getting your full volume out. So if you go up on the volume knob to get more output going into your other amplifier, it's going to max out your speakers. So do be aware of that. You may have to turn a few things on or off. Just be aware that the volumes all run simultaneously. The layout of the Q11 is very nice. I do like the little rubber feet, holds it in place, does not take up much room on the desk, and it easily will stack with something up on top of it. That way you can see your cool lighting. You have enough inputs with the USB, optical, and coax, and then the multiple outputs is nice. But the big key for the Q11, the big feature, dual DAC chips. And I know this is controversial. Do DACs make a difference? Do they sound different? Are they really that important depending on pricing? Can you just use one and it'll sound like everything else? And I have been very vocal when asked if DACs make a difference by saying yes, DACs do make a difference. And I do hear differences between different DACs. Now, is it something super huge and mega noticeable? Not normally. Usually it's pretty subtle, but I have heard differences in DACs. So when Douk Audio asked me if I was interested in reviewing the Q11, I was like, sure, why not? I will give it a listen. Let's get this out of the way. And so I started to do some testing when it arrived. And first thing I did was I hooked it up to the Fosse Audio V3 monos with the Martin Logan Motion 15s, which are behind me, and I started to listen. And I used it on the various different DAC settings, mainly with the combined ESS and AKM setting. And as I was listening, I was like, okay, this is, pretty typical. Normal sounding, kind of a little something different here, but nothing, out of the ordinary. After a couple of days, I changed and started listening to the AKM, and then a couple of days later, I started listening to the ESS. Went through the process of listening, and then I was like, okay, let's try it with some headphone amplifiers, let's try it with some tube amps, and let's try it with different things. And I did the whole thing over again. I started listening for a day or two with each of the different DAC settings. And I started to notice something common. And so I started to think, do DACs really make a difference? And so I really wanted to do a test where I was using the same volume, but only, and swapping between the AK and the ESS, and then combining them. And so I set up all my different amplifiers, speakers. I used the same speakers, and I set it at the same volume, same tracks, and I listened, and I listened, and I listened, and then I would change to the next DAC and listen and listen and listen at the same volumes, at the same tracks, over and over and over again. And these are my conclusions. So, the Douk Audio Q11 is a very clean and clear sounding DAC. It's a very neutral sound. There is not any colorization added in. It's going to reveal exactly what the track sounds like. It's a very clean and clear, neutral source. I was rather impressed at that. There's not any colorization. It's allowing just the DAC chips to make the difference. And so as I listened to it, I noticed that on every single amplifier that I used, whether or not it was a Fosse Audio V3 mono, if it was the Mytek Liberty THX AAA HPA, the Gishelli Labs Erish, the Tor Audio Roger, the X Duo TA26S, the SMSL HO150X, the Drop 1 Linear, all of the different amplifiers that I used, they all said this is a very neutral, very clean and clear DAC. It's not adding in anything extra. You're getting what the amplifier is adding in as far as warmth, or if it's a very clean sounding amp, and it's revealing the track. So then I started to listen for differences between the different DACs. And the difference was very hard to differentiate. It's let me be very clear. There is a difference, but it's very, very subtle, and it's extremely difficult to hear the differences. But they are there. You really, really have to pay attention. And so, what are the differences I heard? I heard that the Sabre DAC is a little bit more forthright in its presentation, has a little bit less body, but yet has a little bit more of a neutral presentation, and is a little bit wider in its soundstage and a little bit more precise. But it's also a little bit on the verge of being too aggressive. And then the AK chip. The AK chip has just a very slightly smaller stage, a little bit more note weight and a little bit more fullness. There's a slight hint of warmth. And then in the uppers, they're slightly rounded and a little bit softer in its presentation, so it's not quite as forthright as it is with the Sabre. But all of these differences are very, very subtle. Some are more noticeable on certain songs, but for the most part, these differences are very, very minute. I mean, they're small. And when I used the setting where it combined them together, that's where it got interesting, because it kind of took the pluses of both. You got a little bit more body and a little bit more fullness from the AK, with just that little bit of a rounded, smoother top end, but yet you got the little bit more forthrightness, but it just wasn't quite as intense from the Sabre. And you got a little bit better of an image throughout. And so I liked all three DACs or DAC settings, and I found that all three of them work very well, and it kind of depended on what amp I was pairing it with and what headphones or speakers I was using. And so it's a unique device, because it does show you that there are subtleties and there are differences in DAC chips, but they're not this world buster, amazingly, whoa, eye-popping difference. It's more of a presentation difference. They're all clean. They all have very good clarity. They all are very neutral. They're not adding anything extra to the track. Tonality is very accurate. Tone and timbre, very accurate. It's about the subtle differences in presentation, how one's a little bit more forthright, how one's a little bit more precise, how one is a little bit more expansive, those type of differences versus the actual tonality. So, did this change my mind or confirm as to whether or not DAC chips make a difference? This just kind of goes, yeah, your thinking is still the same. The differences are very minute and very subtle, and extremely hard to differentiate. I'm happy with all three settings, and it's a very, very unique device. $170, I'm surprised that they were able to do this. It would be nice if it had separate volumes, that way that they're not all running simultaneously, and that way you don't have those whoopsie moments of, oh, whoa, I'm too loud, I'm going to blow out my speakers if I'm using it in that regard, or headphone-wise, things like that. But other than that, if you want to hear differences or try to hear differences between AK and ESS, $170. hook it up to an amplifier, use your speakers or headphones of choice, and see if you hear a difference. Interesting. I like the look of it. I like the feel of it. Something different. And yeah, I recommend it. This has been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Speaking of next video, somewhere on screen, subscription links, notification bells. If you haven't already, please check those off. Don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video, and check out all the links down below. There's all kinds of information down there regarding how you can contact channel, follow channel, support channel. All that kind of stuff is listed down below. Speaking of supporting the channel, I want to thank my supporters through Patreon and YouTube memberships. Thank you very much for all that you provide. I also want to thank those who give one-time gifts. That is also much appreciated. If you're interested in supporting the channel, there's various ways that you can do it through one-time gifts with PayPal, Venmo, and YouTube, or you can do monthly subscriptions through Patreon and YouTube memberships, where you can get access to videos early, and also you can get access to Discord and other benefits. So check out all the links down below if you're interested in supporting the channel. It'd be greatly appreciated. Also down below, there's all kinds of other information, gear recommendations, music recommendations, and gear rankings, and all kinds of things. So check out the links down below. And lastly, don't forget to enjoy the music, and that honesty is the best policy.